Alright everybody, so how are we doing today? So, recently there was a vigil for the 1989 massacre in Tiananmen Square in China. In this vigil, there were clear attempts to censor anyone talking about it. The vigil is frowned upon, it's taboo. But Beijing is an interesting place. Because you see, it was actually a British colony. Oh, I'm sorry, Hong Kong. Hong Kong. Whew, big mistake. Yeah, you guys can rip into me in the comment section. I know you will. But it returned to Chinese rule in 1997 under a one country, two systems formula that guarantees rights and freedoms not seen on the mainland. Organizers said 180,000 joined the peaceful vigil, filling 6 football fields. Police authorities put the turnout at 37,000. In comparison, authorities in mainland China, where the anniversary remains taboo, deployed a security blanket in and around Tiananmen Square. China has never provided a death toll for the 1989 violence, because they don't want to talk about it, obviously, because it would make them look bad. Rights groups and witnesses say it could run into the thousands. They obviously don't want to talk about it, because it would make the Communist Party look very negative. And it is. It's a horrible thing. It is very important that Hong Kong people continue to remember the June 4th tragedy and indeed preserve the memory, said Richard Soy, vice chairman of the Hong Kong Alliance in support of patriotic democratic movements of China. They basically want to have a democratic China and not have a communist dictatorship. I say good luck. That sounds like a wonderful thing. Now, about this security blanket. Tourists thronged Tiananmen Square earlier on Tuesday amid tighter than usual security. Although most visitors approached by Reuters, who I got this article from, said they were unaware of the bloody crackdown on student-led protests 30 years ago or would not discuss it. The anniversary of the crackdown is not spoken of openly in China and is not formally marked by the government. A 67-year-old man surnamed Li, sitting on a bench about a 10-minute walk from the square, said he remembered the events of June 4th, 1989 and its aftermath clearly. I was on my way back home from work. Shenzhen Avenue was strewn with burned-out vehicles. The People's Liberation Army killed many people. It was a bloodbath. People's Liberation Army? More like People's We're Gonna Murder You Army. After he thought the government should give a full account of the violence, he said, "What's the point? These students died for nothing." Refinitiv, a company that provides data and news to the financial services industry was spun off from the parent company of Reuters last year, has removed some Reuters stories on Tiananmen Square from its subscriber terminals. Reuters says its coverage is not affected. Among the students' demands in 1989 were a free press and freedom of speech, disclosure of leaders, assets, and freedom to demonstrate. However, exiled former protest leaders say these goals are further away in China than ever because the government has in the past decade suppressed a civil society nurtured by years of economic development. They're using censorship and forced suppression to keep this directly under their control. Tiananmen also remains a point of contention between China and many Western countries, which have implored Chinese leaders to account for giving the People's Liberation Army, or PLA, the order to open fire on their own people. China's foreign ministry denounced criticism by U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who called for China to release all political prisoners and offered his salute to the heroes of the Chinese people who bravely stood up 30 years ago in Tiananmen Square to demand their rights. A PLA officer ashamed. This officer, Li Xiaoming, says, "I am very ashamed. I repent wholeheartedly. The reason that I spoke up today is that I don't want people to forget the events of June 4th. He is now currently an Australian citizen, and apparently he had been seen literally just bursting into tears over it, to characterize the grim nature of this act, this act of absolute authoritarian cruelty. Authoritarianism being the greatest danger, the greatest sin in politics. This is what excess government power leads to, which is why I stand as an anti-authoritarian, leaning in a highly libertarian direction. Because I know what happens when toxic authoritarians get the power they desire so much. You get shit like this. And people like to turn the Nazi Holocaust into a left versus right issue. But that's not what it is. It's not a left versus right issue. It's an issue of authoritarianism and how far a government should be allowed to go in the direction of power, and certainly should never be allowed to go that far. Communism, a higher body count than Hitler, also an authoritarian regime. Bottom line is, it's just a terrible thing. And then authoritarianism also leads to stuff like this. Refinitiv blocks Reuters stories on Tiananmen from its icon platform. This is in Beijing, actual Beijing, because of my earlier screw-up. Under pressure from China's government, financial information provider Refinitiv has removed from its icon terminal Reuters news stories related to the 30th anniversary of the bloody suppression of pro-democracy demonstrators in Beijing, Tiananmen Square. Refinitiv took the action to block the stories last week after the Cyberspace Administration of China, CAC, which controls online speech, threatened to suspend the company's service in China if it did not comply, 3 people with knowledge of the decision said. Refinitiv's intention was to block the distribution of stories only in China. 2 people familiar with the matter said, however, many users outside of China said they could not see the stories. It was not clear why. Earlier versions of the story were removed from icon scrolling news feeds in China soon after publication early on Tuesday morning. Other recent Reuters stories with Tiananmen in the headline were also not available for icon clients outside China, said the Tiananmen stories were visible on their feeds on Tuesday. Refinitiv was formed last year when Reuters news parent company, Thomson Reuters Corp, sold a 55% stake in its financial and risk, or F&R unit group, led by private equity firm Blackstone Group LP. This is just straight censorship, because it's a taboo topic, because it makes their authoritarian regime look bad. Of course. Refinitiv is a financial markets, news, and data provider in China. We're proud of the role we play in the world to facilitate transparent and efficient financial markets, the company said in an email statement to Reuters. As a global business, we comply with all our local regulatory obligations, including the requirements of our license to operate in China. Refinitiv has a license to provide financial information in China. A person familiar with the matter said the terms have not changed since the company was established, but enforcement has become more stringent. In an internal memo to staff, Reuters president Michael Friedenberg and editor-in-chief Steve Adler said the news organization had spoken to Refinitiv and expressed its concern. They urged staff to continue reporting as you always would, to pursue the truth without fear or favor. David Crundwell said in a statement that Reuters reports around the world in a fair, unbiased, and independent manner in keeping with the Thomson Reuters trust principles, and we stand by our China coverage, which is also why I often go to Reuters as my main #1 source. They've proven more than reliable in the past. We continue to provide Refinitiv with the same scope of content that we always have, including stories relating to China, and Refinitiv's decisions will not affect the breadth of our quality of our coverage. We remain committed to telling the stories that matter. Anyway, this is just more toxic authoritarianism, which leads to things like apparently mass murder, censorship, and just general all-out abuse. This is not a left versus right issue. this is a top versus bottom issue. Seriously, if you're an authoritarian, fuck you. Good day.